Bawumia campaigns hit up. You see the tracks there on the front page. Nana receives Guinea-Bissau State Award and man 40 molest girl 10. Yoko chases SIM fraudsters. On the back page, Right to Dream Academy acquires MLS side. Berry Lady CEO sports princesses. Angelotti denies losing real job, and City can now visualize treble. On the front page of the Ghanaian Times, $3 billion EFC deal. IMF support will restore economic stability growth, Finance Minister assures. Also, commercial drivers defy GPRTU directive to reduce fares 10%, transport fares, that is. Chief Justice inaugurates Besi District Court in Accra. What's on the back page? Chief Justice inaugurates the Besi District Court there near Ibonte. There is the Paramount Chief of Besi Traditional Area. Rehabilitation of Kumawu Town Roads progressing steadily. And the Finder newspaper, Parliament to petition local government on behalf of Achimansa District, 25 police regions to offer criminal clearance services, and journey to rebuild economy augmented. $604 million from IMF to hit Bank of Ghana account today. Leap school feeding others strengthened. Former Upper East NPP chairman rallies support for Dr. Bawumia, and that's what we have here, Helen.
All right, well, I've got the daily graphic this morning. Debt restructuring. Nation seeks 10.5 billion US dollars in savings. Government optimistic of fruitful engagement. Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta is pictured here. Adhere strictly to IMF targets. 2 economists, 2 government. And rice importation will cease. We also have Dr. Joseph Sian Ejopong addressing a conference, and he's pictured on the front page. The ABC newspaper has this to say: Alan boys dazed by Bawumia's signal, suffer social media trolls. And clear and present danger. Ashalibotwe residents protest sighting of new fuel station. Who are the owners and who gave the approval after the NPA halted their construction?
Order from above.
Order from above. We'll get into the details as we progress. IOCO releases list of 3 wanted persons for their involvement in various fraudulent activities. The spotlight there on persons carrying out frauds and scams, if you will. The Ghanaian Observer, $3 billion IMF deal. Ghana set to receive $600 million US dollars today. Asin North, NPP hails Supreme Court ruling. We'll continue to deliver on our promises. That's coming from Vice President Dr. Bawumia, and Otumfo rally support for Green Ghana project. Lastly, the Daily Analyst. Again, the IMF story front and center as it is on the various front pages. Approval for $3 billion IMF bailout. Ofori-Atta grateful to Ghanaians for participating in domestic debt exchange program. IMF bailout will enhance Ghana's resilience to shocks. IMF mission chief to Ghana asserts. IMF deal will bite hard on Ghanaians. NDC raises alarm. I want to kick things off on that note, Johnny, because
the IMF
I cited the communique from the minority.
Okay.
And, well, they were alerting us to the fact that we shouldn't be so jubilant because the implications, as we already know from our finance minister, are dire. Going to the IMF is no walk in the park.
Exactly.
They impose measures that for the citizenry can be quite tight and biting, but I don't know whether the tone of that communique was a bit too pessimistic. Right now we are here, right? As government or official will say, where we find ourselves. We found ourselves here.
Who brought us here?
Who brought us here? But it's as if we woke up and where we find ourselves. How did we find ourselves here? But we are here, and yes, those calls of caution, good, but I don't want to say it had an element of scaremongering, but what was the actual purpose of the communique? Yes, we've been told time without number that it's going to be very difficult. The NDC had an opportunity to also mitigate some of our financial woes when it came to appointing ministers. They said we don't need any more. You have deputies who could possibly fill in that capacity, you know, although they carry out different functions. But you went ahead and approved them and endorsed them. And then endorsed them. Many loans have come and gone which have gone through Parliament, and the minority also approved them. Well, they say governments, you know, it's government's right to borrow, but of course using the monies borrowed for prudent use is what is in contention. But I think that communique, I wanted to grasp really what was the essence.
We've always been in an IMF program. We started an IMF program in 2014 to 2015. It was supposed to have ended by 2017, and then the government comes into power, extends the IMF program. We ended somewhere in April 2019, and then COVID sets in. So just within a space of about 5-6 months, COVID sets in. We had to go back to the IMF, and here we are. It only tells you one thing, that so far without the IMF, it appears we have not been able to manage our affairs properly. That's the first point. The second point to note is that yes, we were under an IMF program. So between all that period from 2017 all the way till now, and all the borrowing, and if you're under a program and you keep borrowing, it raises concerns that you know that okay, you are going to ask for someone to give you a certain support or cushioning to be able to manage and run your affairs, and yet you are borrowing in excess. And that's where the real motive of IMF comes to play. What exactly is IMF thinking? Because IMF was around during all that time when everybody was saying you're borrowing too much, or this borrowing is unnecessary. The IMF was still there. Was the IMF expecting that, well, we will not be able to handle our affairs and we'll come to them for the 17th time? Was that why they kept quiet and they were engineering? Does that make the IMF itself trustworthy? Because the IMF was here. We often don't talk about it. We say, you hear government communicators talk about the fact that, oh, well, the economy was doing well until COVID came. The economy was doing well until COVID came. Well, that economy was doing well because we were on an extended IMF program. That fact had to be laid bare. It was only when we left the IMF program and we had a Wachi and Kenke party, and then next one, here we are. You get the point. So the minority can say all that they want to say. The majority can say all that they say. But they should recognize that there is a Ghana that is beyond their political parties and leanings. And that Ghana, whether IMF chooses to come or not, will still be Ghana. But will it be the Ghana that we all have envisaged? Because the president talks about a Ghana beyond aid.
That's right.
Now it looks like Ghana is standing in need of aid. That's where we are now.
And when you talk, Johnny, about the IMF being around, we say we are a sovereign state. Please. We know what we are doing. We are, we don't have to go to the IMF. Please. We have the resources. Please. We have the capacity. Please. If I'm in the IMF and you as a sovereign state say you know what you are doing, I'm going to fold my arms and watch you, because what is my core mandate? I'm also a business. And if I'm picking signals, and I recall as early as 2019, 2020, there were some signals that, hey, well, you guys should watch out, because if things take a turn, you could crash. And those prophecies came to fruition. The signals were there, but at the same time, government was telling the people and the world that we know what we're doing. We are sovereign. We have our resources. We are capable. We're not going today. We're not going tomorrow. Consequences are dire. That was the assurance that we don't need the IMF.
You have mastered the thing.
I'm memorizing. I'm memorizing.
Oh my God. Well, the IMF support will restore economic stability and growth, according to the finance minister. This is a story by Kingsley Asari in the Ghanaian Times, page 12. It says the Minister of Finance, Ken Oforiatta, says the clinching of the $3 billion exchange credit facility deal with the International Monetary Fund will help bring the country back on on the path of growth, macroeconomic stability and debt sustainability. Though the government acknowledges the IMF program is not the magic wand to address all the socio-economic and development challenges facing the country, it is the first step to restoring economic stability and promote inclusive growth, he said during a joint virtual press conference between Ghana and the IMF in Washington yesterday. And that's it. He says, well, it will bring us back. But you've heard the likes of Professor Gachi, Professor Pokping, Joe Jackson and the rest say, like, look, this is not the all in all, because this is where we have dug ourselves into, or the depths to which we have sunk. It will take more than just $3 billion to bring us up. And this $3 billion, by the way, is over a 3-year period.
That's right.
So what it means is that it is for this year, for 2024, and for 2025, and maybe beyond, up to the first quarter of 2026 or so. What it means is that if there's a change in government, the next government that comes on will have to bear the brunt of this program, and will have to be thinking of how to jump out of this IMF fire which we find ourselves, because IMF will give you a lot of conditionalities, as we've seen already. We're told by the minority that tariffs for electricity and water will go up every 3 months because it is a condition of the IMF. Yesterday I saw something from Cocoa Board asking that some contracts of some what do you call it? I've forgotten what the folks that work within the sector, one of the chains, will have to cancel or forget about their contracts because the IMF is in town, and all of those things come to mind and ask, is this going to spell more hardship for the ordinary person while the government seeks to look good? Is it going to spell more doom for the ordinary person? So this is what I was talking about. The Cocoa Board, Ghana Cocoa Board, the enumerators of Ghana Cocoa Board, they were supposed to have had a contract extension instead of the 30th of June where the contract would end. They said by 1st of June, Yapong, Ejai Juman, Obian Kofi. And there's no alternative for them.
That's right.
So what are they going home to do? The banks are lending to us at a cutthroat, rate. So are we able to go and borrow to start our own business? AGI is already crying that, look, we need to be careful how we go about this whole IMF program and the implementation of saying, because if you don't take care, you are going to suffocate small businesses and private businesses, and before you know it, your economy will crash. The private sector is the engine that runs the economy.
That's right.
So if the private sector begins to complain and they tell you that they are in trouble and you are not listening to the private sector, we will all be in trouble. Look at the tariffs for water.
Yeah.
So it means that your bottled water prices will go up. Your sachet water prices will go up. Those who use it to produce fruit juice and all of that will go up. Those who use it to prepare other beverages will go up. Your alcoholic beverages, like your beers and your stout and everything else, because they use water as a base, it will also go up.
That's right.
And then you add on to it, beyond the water tariffs, the excise duty tax that came. You saw the list, the comprehensive list.
That's right.
That includes beers, includes bottled water, it includes malt drink, it includes all those ones that are, and those that are produced here by a certain quantum, those are not produced here by a certain. So you have added that layer onto it. Then you add income tax.
Right.
There's a new one because of the IMF, the income tax. You add it on. So just one, you can pick just one product, which we used to sell maybe at 1 cedi. But by the time you do all the additions and everything else, it could move from 1 cedi to maybe 1 cedi 80 pesos, or maybe 2 cedis or 2 cedi 50 pesos. Where are the people supposed to collect the money from to be able to deal with these issues? Because
we know that our incomes generally have not gone up. So it's impacting on everyone's personal economy. Everything else is going up but one's pay. But to summarize, the IMF deal key conditions include electricity tariff hikes, tax reforms, which we've discussed, enactment of an ambitious 2023 budget, continued monetary policy tightening, and a comprehensive set of structural reforms. All things that go towards really biting the ordinary citizen. But because we mentioned the minority, there's a story here in the Daily Graphic captured in page 19. They are saying that government IMF deal advice was ignored. It's a short piece. The minority in parliament has said it advised the government to seek an IMF bailout in 2021, but the government ignored its advice. And I do recall the calls as early as 2021 for government to go to the IMF. According to the minority, if government had listened to wise counsel, things would not have deteriorated to the current state. We wish to state for the record that when the government finally decided on July 4, 2022, 11 months ago, to seek an IMF bailout, we in the minority were clear in our minds that this government had long missed every golden opportunity. Well, like I say, we are here now. We are here now. And as much as government has found every other reason to tell us why we are in this ditch, we are here now. And we have to just start paving the way?
I am interested to find out. Yesterday, I'd wished that the pressman had asked the question, when exactly we'll start feeling the impact of the money that IMF is now giving us. I really want to know, because now you go around town, you don't need anybody to tell you that things are not going on well. And the whole idea that we're getting an IMF deal, there was a certain reaction within the forex market. So dollar moved from 11, suddenly came to 9, 10, 10 and 9, and then so people were actually scared. So I had somebody, who told me that I'm going to swap my dollars for CDs because it could be dropping further. The news of the IMF coming alone, as if you've been running for a long time, you're now tired, and somebody is coming in to help you. I mean, you let yourself go and you just fall off so the person can embrace you and take you to safety. That's the kind of thinking that runs largely within those spaces. If you listen to Honorable Kennedy Japan, he said because of this inflation and exchange rate, he'll have about 12 million or so.
Yeah, I recall that.
If you're a big businessman, you will feel it.
Yeah.
You will really feel it, because you're looking at the board, you're looking at the spreadsheet day by day, and you feel it. So the news of the IMF coming in alone sounds a bit good. It gives a certain vibe and flavor. What about the departure of Ken Ofori-Atta? Because it was a promise that the president made that if we move Mr. Ofori-Atta away from the IMF deal, it will destabilize the ongoing processes and negotiations. But when we are done, we can talk about it. Now we are done with the IMF program. It has come. Is it time for us to talk? Should Ken go? Should he stay?
I wouldn't hold my breath if I were you, Johnny, because of the signals that I think we picked from when about 80 MPs initially made it clear that they were no longer happy with Ken Ofori-Atta being in office, and they were demanding that he be removed by the president. The president did give that assurance, but I recall shortly after that, Alfred Akansey had a sit down with Information Minister Kojo Nkrumah, and when pressed to give an answer as to when the finance minister will be exiting, I think Kojo Nkrumah was a bit vague. He made the analogy that, well, we are in a plane, and if things are turbulent, let's let the pilot land. They might argue that, well, the deal is not in fact truly done because the money is coming in tranches, and they would not like to remove the main person who was spearheading this. I wouldn't hold my breath. It was clear that the MPs had been whipped into line. After they came publicly, it was 80, then something like 98 plus, all seeking the removal of Ken Ofori-Atta. The party wrote to those MPs and said, calm down. Just let's take it easy. By December, that deal is going to come. Of course, we know that in December, that deal didn't come through. We're now seeing some monies come our way, June 2022. So for those asking, and I've seen a lot of reaction on social media, people asking, well, now that this deal is in motion, we're getting the first tranche, does it mean the finance minister is going? From where I sit, the president says he really believes in this finance minister. I don't see him asking Ken Ofori-Atta to step aside or step down. We drew parallels between what was happening in the UK last year when we had their finance minister, I forget his name, of Ghanaian descent. He walked away, and the market reacted so positively.
That's right.
Well,
within that short period, how many times did Britain change their finance ministers?
It was like a revolving door.
I mean, you come in, you see that, Charlie, you can't do the thing, you just get out.
Step aside.
So, out of his own free will, I think that Mr. Ofori-Atta will do himself a lot of good if he decides that, look, I am going. Out of his own, I mean, he wanted, and me, I've always said this, that Mr. Ofori-Atta knows where he has brought us. I'm sure now he appreciates that the industrial input which he didn't have prior to becoming finance minister is now telling on him. So it's not about Harvard, Yale, and whatever it is that was rubbed in our face, that a total of 80 years of expertise, Charles Dubois, Ken Ofori-Atta, and all of that Gabriel Tridako spoke about. You remember when the Japan deal came up and we complained, because then he was also transaction advisor. Now it is obvious that industrial input is missing. And if I were him, this deal has more or less, if you like, okay, I took you into the ditch. I've been able to get you out of the ditch with the help of the IMF. if he goes into private practice, he still will have some good name to be a consultant. If he had been sacked there and then, nobody would have gone to him for any sort of consultancy. Now that the applause is loudest, he should live on his own.